Thank you. And thank you very much, Neelie, for coming along this morning. You're used to having big jobs in government, but this one in charge of the digital agenda for Europe is a really big one. You were doing competition before. I know that you now tweet and you're on Facebook, but you were on the board of Lucent beforehand. How digital were you before you took on this job, though?
Well, that is rather a tough question, so to say. I was involved, no doubt about that. Being on the board in the last century of '02 and having discussions at that time, what would be the future of the mobile industry. So I was aware, and I was forced to be active. But getting back to the start of your question, indeed it's a completely different portfolio compared to the last one. And people are sometimes asking, poor you, after such a great portfolio having this one. And I'm quite open and honest to you. This is the most creative and innovative one, and it is indeed close to the citizen, and that is what intrigues me for competition policy, and it's a must, and it's still a must, and we should have fair level playing fields and what have you. I earned a lot of money for the taxpayer in Europe, so that was also not a bad issue. But at the end of the day, this one is really creative and never a dull moment, so to say. And what is fascinating for me, you can explain to the European citizen that it is so important for them that we are not only at stake, but that we are really taking the driver's seat again. And that's fascinating I take too much time, but you will certainly...
No.
We were at a certain moment talking about driver's seat. We were in the driver's seat with the GSM development, and we lost a little bit, and we should be back in track, and with research and innovation, and with the help of you, I think that should be done.
Well, you've drawn up a digital agenda for Europe, which is pretty far-reaching. I think you've got 100 targets you intend to meet.
101, just to get it correct.
We'll come back and count how many you've reached the end of your term. One of them is to get broadband having 100% penetration, and then fast broadband. What's your time scale for that?
2013, and I took a risk, no doubt about that. 2013, every European digital. By the way, that's not only talking about fiber cable, but it's also satellite and what have you, so the whole mix. And then 2015, a speed up, and 2020, indeed 50% higher than 100%, 100 megabits.
And at this stage, you're confident you can reach those targets?
Yeah, but it's not an easy job. So I badly need all the parties, so to say, and that is what I discussed yesterday in the European Parliament again, that for me, it's not a matter of there should be and otherwise there's punishment. Of course, at a certain moment there can be punishment, no doubt about that, but we need to involve all the parties that it's win-win. And so far, I think there is still the good track.
Well, we know from your previous role that you don't hesitate from punishing where you think it's appropriate, as some people in the audience here will know. You had a few targets. Nevertheless, at this stage, you're confident of reaching those aims by 2013, 2015?
Yes, for otherwise I wouldn't have said, that would be rather quick that I would skip, and that's not my character, so to say.
What about Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi is extremely important and could be also more than a solution than we were expecting so far. So talking about our new step, also in the roaming issue and in that dossier, I'm aware that with the exceptional growth of data and what have you, and taking the last result of the telecom package with Parliament and Council and so on, I think that we have to be aware, and that is what I'm discussing with the incumbents, but also with the newcomers. We we need both, so to say, but that with the growth of the data, we have to be quite creative, and I'm always saying we should be more out-of-the-box thinking and try to get Wi-Fi 2 in our plan.
Well, we know that Wi-Fi can really improve productivity, so whose duty is it to provide it for us?
Well, I always start with let those who are active in that field, let they be the creative ones. But please, let's sit together and let's cooperate, and far more than we are doing now, for it is indeed, and I will repeat that sentence, but it is win-win, and I strongly believe that if it's win-win, then don't hesitate and don't wait till the other ones are in the arena. We should join.
But who pays?
At the end of the day, we are talking about activities that are profitable. So, and I'm a liberal, but I need to explain for those from the US that liberal in the political sense in Europe is a bit different from liberal in the United States. Having said that, I strongly believe in the market, but I also am aware, and certainly after my 5 years in the former portfolio, that sometimes you need to shake up the memory of the parties, that they have to behave and that they have to take the principles of a fair market game, so to say. So all in all, at the end of the day, there are no free lunches, patients. There are no free lunches, so we have to cover the cost. We have to make a bit of profit, for otherwise I can't find an investor to put all the money in.
I think there's a free lunch after this session, actually, and I gather it comes without strings. But I take your point. Are you, before long, going to have to take action to get the sort of coverage you want? And I mean legal action.
Yeah. I'm quite clear. I'm Dutch and straightforward, and what you see, you get, so to say. I'm a strong believer in starting with trust in the other ones. But if you are aware that that is not at stake, then I will act, and I will be absolutely very active in proposing a legal institute. But I think that we need to be aware, and therefore communication is extremely important. We need to be aware that it is not the government or the commission or whatever, and us, the business world. I have the privilege to be in the other part too. And it is end-to-end, so we have to do it together. And if it's not needed, then please, self-regulation, please behave like your principles. If that is just tackled, then I will act, and don't be afraid, that will be clear.
Be afraid. But this really takes us into net neutrality, the issue of who pays, and you were talking about this in Parliament yesterday. There are some who are concerned that we are getting to a stage where there's a risk of it not being a fair background, of some people being unfairly penalised by the charging system. Are you confident that net neutrality can be achieved? When you've said in the past that the internet is not naturally a neutral service.
Point taken, correctly quoted. Yesterday I explained again, and I always start in that type of discussions talking about net neutrality. Please, let's start what is the definition of net neutrality, for if net neutrality is meant as being a free lunch, then I'm not agreeing, for there is no free lunch. Even the lunch afterwards, one way or another, you will be faced with the bill, so to say. But we need to be aware that net neutrality is far more about openness and about transparency. And at the end of the day, there will be political decisions, no doubt about that, talking about universal services, about service général d'économie. But, well, that taken into account, net neutrality is absolutely main. For if that is not openness, then we are indeed blocking a development where the free world, where a democracy will face a very bad result.
So where do you stand on content providers being charged by the networks?
Well, it depends on what you are talking of. And there are, of course, very creative content providers at the moment who are taking the opportunities. And I'm, again, thinking about my political background, I'm very much in favor for not interested in the content of the message, so we should be very, very careful. On the other hand, I'm also interested in the investor and in the openness, and that is what we are discussing now with the incumbents, for example. If the incumbents are not allowing the newcomers to join the party, but rightly asking for a fee, for otherwise who would be interested in investing, and that is not only for that, but that is in general terms.
But do you have any concerns that if the networks can decide what they charge and to whom, there could be some unfair discrimination there?
That is a risk, and we should be very alert, and I will be certainly act if that is the case, that there is discrimination. For openness means for me openness and nothing else. But I want to just split openness and the price mechanism. I'm a economist by training, and I remember my first lesson I got that with a issue that is unique, or what that is anyhow scarce in the market. A price mechanism is an excellent instrument to deliver what at the end of the day could make sense for the community.
I come at this as part of, in a way, the old media, which is now moving into new media in quite a big way. But where do you see the media's role in the future of the internet and information? I watched the previous presentation and I just wonder what's going to happen to conventional journalism when people can go and find all the information that they need.
If you allow me, Patience, to start with a bit of a general approach, and I get your question, so I will be back to that. In our history, we thought that with the book printing, that was the end of. When the Industrial Revolution was there, we thought that it's the end of. And now I think it's the third revolution, so to say, and that's the digital one. And does that mean that things are finalizing? No, but it will be in a new way. And that is what I'm so not only impressed by, intrigued by. Entrepreneurship, by definition, is borderless. And every time, and that is also with your sector, so to say, and with journalism, I'm absolutely certain that they will find a new way. And those who are saying, oh my goodness, it's the end of the story and we need help and we need state aid. Come on, instead of complaining, be active and try to find the new niches. And sometimes it's not a niche, but it is even greater. And looking at the performance, and we were standing there and impressed, it will stimulate people also to read about the car or the drink or the skateboard or whatever. So it won't be the only way of getting your information. And there, in a modernized entrepreneurship, I'm absolutely certain that it will take a real challenge. And there, I sincerely hope that Europe is playing a great deal. And if you allow me, I take too much time. In this portfolio, and that was a surprise, for you were asking, were you involved in the whole area where you are responsible for now? My biggest surprise was that this portfolio is a part about the telecommunication and about all those issues that are involved in communication. But an even bigger part, as well budget-wise, as well people-wise, is just focus on research and innovation. of my Directorate General, 2/3 of the people, or even more, are involved in research and innovation. Very clever and talented people, more than 700, so to say, a budget of far more than 1 billion euros on an annual base, and not doing the research and innovation themselves, but just focusing how can we push the European efforts, and how can we push combinations of the business world, research institute, universities, and our efforts and funding. And that is fascinating what's going on. And my only complaint to my people is, goodness gracious, why aren't you communicating what we are doing? For it is absolutely impressive. And sometimes people from the US or the Far East are more aware what we are doing than our own European citizens.
Well, you're communicating it now, and if there are people here with great ideas who are finding that the banks are not providing the money they need to develop them, can they come to you and your department and access that fund?
Absolutely. Talking about what we are spending now on the media innovation, and then we are just in the heart of our discussion. It is nearby 780 million euros on an annual base, and more than 10% of that is spent to media innovation. And I always say, if there are absolutely fascinating proposals, why not making it more than 10%? The 10% is not the law, but it is what is, at the end of the day, the consequence of such an effort. And you don't need to explain to me that research is not, per definition, a guarantee that there is a good outcome. But if we are doing it together and being inspired in our cooperation, then it will be a great walk together. So please, come.
But it's a cliche to say that Europe has never produced a major tech company. The 4 biggest tech companies now are all American. I mean, do you think you can change this?
I don't agree. I know, anyhow, a very excellent example in that Skype, and it's not anymore in hands of those. Yeah, no, but that is fascinating. For all those inventions and all those big companies, the Googles, the Microsofts, name it, they all started in the garage, so to say, or in the bedroom. And at that time, we do have a couple of those examples too. And then you have a point. Our climate in Europe is not very friendly in accommodating those inventions, so to say. I visited the Skype guys in Estonia, and they were just explaining and discussing how it went and so on. And I have 2 remarks to be made, but I would be delighted if the audience is saying you're completely wrong, Neelie. One is the venture capital, and rightly said by you, banks are not our biggest friends in that type of nourishing the initiatives. And I pretend to have a bit of experience with the last 5 years, but not the last 5 years, but especially during the crisis, what we were facing. And that was indeed a surprise, for I still remember the first start, and that was in the summer of 2008, that we thought that is just one, and after the second came, we thought, well, we should ring fence. And so perhaps you were aware, most of us, as well the council, as well in the commission, were not expecting what was going on. And at the end of the day, with all our arrangements and deals that we had to make and that we made, there was one issue: you should go back to your basic task, and that is lending. Having said that, venture capital still a weak point in Europe, not used to it, and so on. Having said that, my second one, and that is even more important, for it's between the ears and eyes, so to say, it's the mindset. If in Europe you are taking an initiative, if you are starting your own company, and there are so many interesting startups, but if you are failing in the United States, you take a new initiative after your bankruptcy, people are even praising you that you learn from your mistakes or from your experiences, and are saying that's great blood in the business world. In Europe, you have that stamp on your hat, and it is, wasn't there something wrong with your? So if we are not skipping that off, and if we are not willing to just judge that these are the best people that we can imagine, those young entrepreneurs, and that is one of the issues that I'm just hammering on and pushing in the Commission for startups. They are our crown jewels.
And the culture on bankruptcy is changing, but it takes time. I know we'd be really glad to take some questions from the audience, but while we find a few, could I just ask you, going back to the issue of media and so on, and certainly my own organisation is investing heavily in producing something that we hope people will pay for and believe, and the evidence is that they will. But what about the whole copyright issue? Because this is something where you're trying to find perhaps a single license for Europe. But in the age of the net, can you just have a single license for Europe?
I'm so grateful that you touched upon this one, for there is so much misunderstanding anyhow about my points of view. What's at stake? Copyright. And it is absolutely a must that there is copyright, no doubt about that. Centuries we delivered a good system in the copyright, and it make our creators not only more creative, but it just give them a very fair remuneration. So I always start with artists, creators, editors, publishers. They need a fair remuneration.
Oh, they do.
I will never forget one of those moments that it was at stake. A couple of your colleagues came over, and they brought the songwriter of ABBA with them, and he was just Björn, and he was saying to me, "Do you like my songs?" And I said, "Oh, I'm one of your fans, and not only at that time, but still." And he said, "Are you realizing that I would never ever have written my second song if I had to take care of my family, not getting a remuneration for the song? For then I had to find a decent job," so to say. And I said, "You don't need to explain to me, for I'm the one, and also with my experience in activities in the art world, I'm aware that artists and creators, they need a fair remuneration." And that is what is worrying me. We do have a system, and that is, on one hand, the consequence of internet and of the whole digital development, that if you don't have a decent system in which you can guarantee such a remuneration, talking about copyright, then you are stimulating piracy. And what I'm really fearing, we do have a single market, as you are all aware, crown jewel of Europe, still a lot to do, and so on. We do have a digital single market per definition, for we are talking about a technique, so to say, that is borderless, and that is a global one. Having said that, there is a digital single market, talking about music, for example, but it is an illegal one. And I learned that when a politician is aware that something is illegal, you have to act. And that is completely at stake. And what I'm fearing, if we are not acting soon, then there will be a lost generation. And there should be a transparent system in which it is a guarantee for, indeed, the remuneration, and that we are aware that it is done in a system that is trans-European, that is borderless, so to say. Does that mean that it is a European, a pan-European license? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's up to the artists, it's up to those who are, but we have to get all the parties together. So also the collecting societies. And I'm not willing to accept that the system as it is now, with the consequence of all that illegality, that is just a fact for life. I will act as much as I can, but I need all the parties, and I need to communicate that at the end of the day, we have in common that there should be a fair, transparent remuneration.
So we know the questions, what we still don't know are the answers. Thank you. Right, over there, please.
Good morning. Stan Magnon from Publicis, but I'll ask the question as netpolitique.net. Two questions, actually. One is, what are you going to do on open data, which is a huge opportunity? You were talking a second ago about all the creative businesses that can be created in Europe, and open data is definitely a fantastic field of opportunities. And two, more than 1,200,000 European citizens have signed an online petition put out by Greenpeace against GMOs. I'm not asking for your opinion about GMOs. I'm asking for your opinion on using new technologies to improve European citizenship. You can see it two ways. You can say, it's terrible and you cannot, okay, 1 million people, it doesn't matter because the European Treaty still doesn't allow for those votes or those voices to be taken into account. Or you can say, great, I have 1,200,000 people I can actually talk to about an issue they care about, and these are the European citizens we should be talking to.
Thank you. I think you've said that the digital society is the digital big society, really. Is that what the question leads you to?
Yes, absolutely. And that is the challenge that we have. So we can't say anymore, it is just behind closed doors, the creation of Europe. I wouldn't be in favor for that, but there is an opportunity. But what I was mentioning before, talking about my own portfolio, we are not using it so far 100%, to put it in a very diplomatic way, what is normally not my approach, so to say. So, great, all those people, but let's use it. And what I hate is when a politician is just blaming the citizen. Start with thinking if you should be blamed yourself because you are not communicating. I'm always saying, if I am in favor for a certain approach, if I'm in favor for organizing, for example, not only the copyright in general terms, but also the audiovisual issues, sure. The orphan works, the out-of-print works, for just misusing your question, Europeana is a great example of just our treasury in Europe, and we are blocked by the out-of-print, and we are blocked by the orphan works. But coming back to your point, so many people, then we should get in discussion, and we should indeed take the opportunity. But some of the people in Brussels are also a bit scared, for it's not an easy ride. It will be bumpy now and then.
Let's take another question.
Hi, I'm Jim Louderback from Revision 3. We're an internet television network in the United States, and next Friday I'm going to be in Washington, D.C., talking to a couple of our legislators about net neutrality from the perspective of a small internet-based business, where if we did not have net neutrality, our business would be much harder. Is there, if I get a chance, is there a European viewpoint I should share with them on net neutrality that you think might help them understand it a little bit better? Yes, great. Prepare my visit beginning of December to the same guys and girls. Sometimes we have reason to count our blessings in Europe, and that is talking about net neutrality. We are far ahead compared to the US, and in most cases we are always in the mood for the US, and they are, and so on. In this case, we are far ahead for two reasons. We are indeed in a competitive atmosphere, and there is no competition in this field in the US, clear cut. Second one, no transparency over there. In Europe, we are absolutely transparent. And
you're going to be quoted verbatim.
Yeah, I would be delighted. Then they can prepare my visit already and thinking, oh my God, that's a tough cookie. Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you. Another question, please. Over there.
Hello, Lars Henriks from Hack Forward, a European pre-seed investor. Our Silicon Valley is the entire Europe, and more companies become more virtual. Do you know how hard is it as entrepreneurs to set up a cross-border company across Europe with Spain and Madrid, Germany and Berlin? Any plans on this, and what's your Twitter handle?
You are absolutely welcome, and please, sooner than later. Having said that, and that is connected with those two issues that I was mentioning already, startups in Europe are facing those two issues, the venture capital and the climate in itself, by the way. It is not the invention. For the invention level is the same, and the guys of the Googles and of the Microsofts and name it.
But there are still different regulations in some
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, that is a fact. But it is also the mentality. A couple of weeks ago, there was a stakeholders meeting talking about the digital agenda, and especially talking about those thoughts and suggestions. There were a couple of guys, European guys, entrepreneurs located in Silicon Valley. They left Europe and Austria and Spain, German, all over the place, so to say. And 12 of them gathered in the Starbucks location in Palo Alto or whatever. And they were just discussing to discover Europe again. And they were just suggesting to us, give us a guidance, how we can do. And we are absolutely intrigued by that type of activities. For I think we can do it ourselves. We can do it, no doubt about that. So if you have suggestions, and not only you, but all of you, that we could take into account, please, for I strongly believe that we should indeed take action, and sometimes our rules are a bit overloaded and our time schedule is a bit too long. I don't believe in eternal life, so let's go for it. But the more concrete, the better it is. If you allow me patience, this week I had a meeting with a couple of entrepreneurs, and they were explaining to me, it was the automotive industry to be a bit more precise, and they were researchers, and they were saying it's too much bureaucracy and too much red tape. And I said, what's new for me? I know that already. So be precise, then I can act. Or I can start to discuss and I can act, hopefully.
Or you can head to the East End of London, where David Cameron thinks he's going to establish a second Silicon Valley, and he'll be welcoming you.
Yeah,
Do we have time for one more question? Thank you.
Madam Vice President, my name is Anne Besançon. I'm the founder of Placecast, which is a fairly successful startup in the Silicon Valley. I'm French, and I did go there because it was just easier to do this. We discussed with a few of my colleagues yesterday the idea of grouping our efforts to come back as a group. And one thing that could be extremely useful is a very concrete suggestion to offer facilities, both logistical and relational, to be able to come back, several of us pooling our efforts, because each of us individually is not apt at setting shop back in Europe. So if there is anything that we can help you with as far as concrete suggestions, I'm in.
I think an
Great.
offer of help rather than a question.
Let's sit together after this meeting and let's exchange just the information. And I'm grateful for that type of initiatives should be taken, and we should be of help.
Now, I'm very conscious that we're coming to the end of our time, and we haven't discussed privacy at all and Big Brother. So if there's anybody out there who was just thinking of asking a question along those lines, I'd be grateful. Otherwise, we have a question here.
It's not about privacy, it's about the practicality of building a startup out of Europe into the world. So we're JVP, we're one of the funds in Israel with offices in Europe as well, but also in the US. And actually our latest company, which just had the greatest success, is European, originated out of Sweden. It's called Click. And I have to say that there's a big different kinds of companies that could be built between Israel and Europe to compete with some of the US startups that I don't think you guys always understand. Because the most complicated thing to to give to the entrepreneurs of the startup that are actually coming from Sweden was, for example, to give them stock options. Stock options in Sweden, if you give the entrepreneur or the employee, you have to pay in advance, when you get the options, about 50 or 60% tax, which means that they have to move elsewhere, or we just have to pay them in some other manner. The other thing is going from country to country, very difficult. The biggest advantage of Europe is that Europeans are very strong in different localities, and if they can have a common denominator, it's a variety of markets. Well, we've done that, but it was very difficult, and it was against the system, not with the systems. I think that, you're the digital commissioner. I think that one needs to understand that the biggest revolution that needs to occur in Europe is not so much digital, but cultural.
Yeah.
The next wave of startups are not necessarily going to be in places like the Silicon Valley. They're going to be in cities. The biggest dimensions that are needed are not just about engineering and digital. It's about cultural disciplines cooperating to create the next big thing. And Europe has ideas and entrepreneurs that are second to none. I can tell you. I'm meeting these people, and they have some of the greatest ideas. They're encouraged to stay in their own countries rather than to go international. They're encouraged to work with one currency rather than a few. They're encouraged to be local rather than global. The biggest advantage that we have in Israel is that we have a very small market. So we don't have a domestic market. We have to work with other cultures in order to create something different. I think that Europe today needs to understand that the variety of countries and the points of views about the different economies and different trends is its biggest advantage. Give zero capital gains to investors that are coming from outside to invest in every country. Give 20–25% taxes on the stock options that you give to the employees, and not make it income tax. Make it easier for people to go from city to city and celebrate it. Have cities celebrate their entrepreneurs. And
Thank you for your question.
Can I have my mic and be big brother here? We're not going to talk about privacy, I'm afraid, because we've got airplane connections with some issues. So unless do you want to say something about privacy, or rather than a question?
Be my ambassador. Let's make an appointment. For I couldn't agree more. It's mindset, it's taking opportunities. 27 member states did make that deal, and we should use it. And still talking about tax policy, it's not in Brussels' hands, but let's sit together, for it is specific elements, and I'm not the one with saying, come on, and so on, time will solve the problem. It won't, for in the meantime we are losing the boat, so to say. So please, let's sit together. Privacy, if you allow me to say one issue. That is one of my biggest worries at the moment. For if I'm saying every European digital, I should be aware that every European should trust the system. And trust the system is having the security that there is need for trust, and that there is. So we need to be absolutely certain that, and of course there will always be a link to whatever, criminal and so on, but we have to do our utmost to cut off, and privacy for me is absolutely main. Also talking about e-health, talking about e-judgment, about e-governance, about the financial issues. So
Are the big search engines taking privacy seriously enough?
Never too much.
Very diplomatic.
So there is still a lot to do. Yeah.
Neelie, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President Patience. Thank you.